my time to me is just too valuable. I could go spend it with my daughter. So it's like my advice to people, and I try to give advice to them all the time, say, hey, if you're asking that question, that means you need to start at square one, work your way, come back to me in 90 days and have a real conversation where you can actually grow, So that's a big piece of advice if they want a mentor.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Excited to be here. Excited to be alive, really. I mean, every day is a blessing, and I hope you guys realize that too as well. But I'm grateful to be here with another amazing guest, Corey Woodruff. I'm excited to get the chance to finally interview the man, the myth, the legend.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's incredible. I mean, I think what I've noticed by kind of following you along, following your story over the past few years is just the tenacity, the consistency, just buying up. You guys don't know who he is. He is the founder, CEO of CMH Capital, which is a mobile home community, mobile home park investor with over 3,500 lots, which you've scaled pretty quickly. And it's incredible because a lot of those are made up of, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of small kind of parks, just kind of a little one here, another one there, another one there. And it seems like every other week or something, you got another one under contract.
Yeah, I'd say average size for us is like 65 lots, but where we found where it makes it irrelevant if you have a good strategy to be able to infill fast and get everyone's money out. So basically fill it, get it stabilized, get the money out. And if it's less than a year or 2 years, then the size will be irrelevant in a very short amount of time. But it's not to say I haven't went without sleep for a while.
Yeah. Well, as every good entrepreneur, right, when you're starting a business and running it, you're putting in the hours, making sure that it's getting up and running. And you've grown to be one of the top 50 mobile home community investors companies in the country, which is incredible accomplishment.
Well, thank you. Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because I started out, my earliest memories was living in a trailer park from a poor family. Didn't have any people who were teaching me about investing or anything like that. And, I ended up coming home from college and I got a decent job in sales. And I actually, after getting my degree, I ended up standing up Edward Jones. I was supposed to go to Chicago and I got a job at a campground selling memberships. And next thing you know, I was like really doing well. And I had saved up some money. And yeah, I mean, all I wanted to do was buy a few rundown trailers and fix them up. And then I ended up buying his park and here we are. Yeah.
Let's slow down a little bit. Let's take this back because I'm buying a few rundown trailers and then all of a sudden buying a park. Like, how did that happen? Like, where did that progress?
Well, the story and how I got started in mobile home parks is actually my biggest flaw, but my greatest successes come from this trait. I went in and I said, hey, I want to buy these 10 trailers off you for $0. And then I want to fix them up with my money. Here's the checking account. I had 40 grand. I had 50 grand. And he's like, yeah, I'm interested. Why don't you come back tomorrow? So I came back the next day and he said, hey, I thought about it. And you should just buy my park altogether. And I was like, I don't even know the first thing about running a park. He said, no, it's easy. You go down, go meet up my lawyers next week and he'll drop a contract. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And I was like, at that time, embarrassingly enough, I was 24 years old. I had like 400 credit score. I had just filed bankruptcy. I had lost my dad a few years back and he was kind of the glue for me, but anyway, I was like, I don't have enough money and I can't get a loan. And he said, well, I'll finance the park for you. How much do you have? And I said, 50. He said, all right, you need walking around money. So give me 40 and off you will. And I didn't do any due diligence, none. I didn't know any better. So I just bought it and we turned that from a $250,000 park to $2 million.
Wow. That's what you call learning, on the job, right?
Well, and it's funny because a lot of investors really like that. Because obviously I put it all on the line. I never ask an investor that has 10 million to give me 10 million, but that's what I did essentially. 40 grand, that might as well, coming from where I came from, the background I came from. My family thought I was crazy because they're like, Corey, you made it. I'm like, if this is making it, I'm not done yet. So, I put it all on the line. So I was my first investor and my first operator and, all that. And my first contractor.
Yeah. And I'm sure you did a lot of the work on your own at the beginning, a one-man show, probably.
Yeah, we had a brand new baby and we were living in Ohio. So we're from Michigan, but our park was about 3.5 hours away. So I would get out of work early at like 2 and I'd drive all the way up to Michigan, 3.5 hours, work till like 2 a.m. and then drive all the way back on no sleep. And my fiance at the time, I mean, we had a brand new baby. So I was starting to feel guilty because the new baby was just going back and forth. I rationalized it because she's got a very nice life now. And I mean, she had to suffer with us, and I had to, be moving in cars and stuff. So it's interesting.
That's incredible. And so I'm sure you learned a lot from first experience. Where would you say, did that scale quickly to the second park, or how long did it take you to get the wherewithal to know hey, I can do this and let me go find another one? What was that about? How did that work?
Well, some guy from Wall Street messaged me on the message board and he's like, hey, I seen that you were asking questions about your first park. He's like, I have money. Sounds like you don't. And I had a good job, but I mean, that doesn't mean anything when you're remodeling homes, right? I had a $100,000 a year job. And I want to buy your park. I'm like, no, I'm not selling it. And he said, well, let me just buy half. So he kind of walked through the motions, but I didn't do due diligence. So I found out there's an oil well that's leaking on the property. And I'm like, okay, I might be screwed, but I was like, I still didn't do a phase one. I just kept going. Anyway, that deal ended up going south. And then he called and he said, hey, why don't you just find me the next park and we'll partner together. So I bought one with him. And then next thing you know, it just kept snowballing from there. And I realized something at that moment. I was good at finding deals and the money seemed to come very fluently. When you have a great deal, I mean, if you came to anybody and you said, hey, I have a $10 million deal, I can make it worth $20 million tomorrow. You're going to find the $10 million. It's just the way it is. So I realized the problem wasn't money, it was deals. So that's what I zeroed in, making sure I knew how to make them profitable and making sure I knew how to find them. It's fast.
And so at this point, there's no real, as you grew, I mean, you've kind of spread out. I mean, you're all over I wouldn't say all over the place, but you're in multiple states. You have parks all over. I think you said 40 parks at this point and growing. So how do you manage? I mean, now I'm assuming that you've kind of grown your company, you have employees, more than just you handling it. But how do you scale that?
Well, that's the interesting part. So it's been an interesting 8 months. So what happened was we went from 300 to 3,000 all within 12 months. I mean, we expanded in a big way. Maybe, it was actually 500 to 3,000 in 12 months. So what happened? We're buying good deals. I mean, there's no way or interest rate raising up or recession that I fear that we're too tight because our strategy is simple. It's going in cap rate. Of course, I care, but who really cares if you can bump rents and you're over an 8 or a 7, depending on the market. And if I can get above a 12 within 2 years and get my investors' money back, that's a deal for me. I mean, that's what these are. But what happened was we were buying and then we put another park under contract and I kind of turned around and looked behind me. And I was like, it's really chaotic. The operations was very chaotic. And I just felt like this weight of guilt. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so anyway, a lot of sleepless nights, but I have 15 people working in my office and they run tip top. I mean, we're finishing parks. We just finished a 41 space park in about 2 months. We had to tear down 5 homes and add 9 in it. I bought the 9 before we even closed. I had the first 5 tore down within the first week and things are moving very well. And collectively, a 96% collection rate. And it got as low as 80. We bought a bunch of value add parks and we had no systems in place to handle it. It was crazy. So the last 8 months is the biggest growth of my life.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, going from 500 to over 3,000 that's huge growth. And it sounds like you're still growing, right? Are you still looking actively?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're closing 1,000 pads. And over the next 90 days, we have them under contract. We have big, nice ones that we're closing and we're extremely excited. So we're just now kind of starting to go out into the RV space. And I think, one of the things that is going to make us special in the RV space is number one, that's my background. That's where I came from. I was selling timeshare campground memberships. But we're building out a team of RV people only as we grow. So we're buying 3 now. We already have 3 in place that we will train. So the MHP people won't touch the RV and the RV won't touch the storage and the storage won't touch the MHP. It'll just be separate. I think everyone needs to stay in their own lane there and be good at that because
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Even though there are a lot of similarities between.
Yeah, a ton. Yeah, there's a ton.
But I guess they are, all separate businesses. So you want to make sure they are kind of compartmentalized.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they're just little things like general store and a day pass tracking and seasonal versus monthly versus nightly, there's a lot more moving parts, more of a business in the RV. I think there's something to be said about the storage being fairly easy once it's filled, but we're developing. So it's going to be a task. I don't know how we can turn an asset class that's supposed to be passive and we make it not passive by developing them. We'll see. So,
well, there's no such thing as passive, in a business. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe for the investors.
For my LP,
yeah. For them, it's passive. Well, that's awesome. I kind of glazed over this earlier and I kind of threw it out that you learned on the job in that first park of yours. But I mean, coming from the background that you did, it sounds like you didn't really have a lot of the financial, wherewithal. And I know in general, people are not given this. I didn't learn anything about finances in high school and barely anything in college either. Where do you pick this stuff up? Was it literally just kind of on your own, or did you have a coach or a mentor or anything like that along the way?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of drives back and forth to Michigan. Every drive, no matter whether it was to work, from work, while I was on break from work, I was either reading. Actually, I really wouldn't swing anybody that way now unless they're just trying to learn the foundational. But I listened to Frank and Dave's DVDs. I mean, there was a time where I kind of started dozing off during them because I could literally say the next line after when they were on the CDs. But if I pulled open my due diligence manual and my home study manual, it's just note after note after note. I read it. I wrote in it so much I had to call Brandon Reynolds and I couldn't afford it at the time. So I had just gotten in a car accident and the books were fine. But I even kind of had to say hey, I need a new book. I got in a car wreck because there's so many notes in them. So they sent me some for free and they were really cool about it. But I lived, ate, and breathed. It allowed me to have just a little bit of experience without having any experience whatsoever,
So that you're referring to Frank Rolfe's, what's it called? The MHP Academy? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I don't remember the actual name of it. It's been about 6-7 years now. Yeah, I think it's MHU, Mobile Home University is what it is.
Oh, gotcha. Right.
But yeah,
okay,
the
awesome.
forums were really good. And, it was a great place to meet people. And yeah, now you have like Ian's mastermind group. That seems to be the leader there now.
That's awesome, which is also incredible because, just a couple of years ago, they were also just starting out and training people. It's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, it's funny because, it's like looking back now, I always make the joke of if I knew how unqualified I was, I would have never did it, right? But it's like as an individual, as a human being, even like as a husband, it just has taught me that there's hard things throughout life. But when you actually put your head down and do something, you can do it. I mean, we took a 3,000 lot, portfolio and took it from like 40% all the way to 80% and the collections from 80% to 96%. It's like, we did it, every one of our parks will be profitable and all of them will essentially refinanced out and money return within the 2 years, all 40 of them. So the case study.
Awesome. What I see there is obviously a lot of, self-confidence. You just decided, it sounds like, that this is something you're going to do. And obviously you were learning, someone to listen to tapes and to listen or tapes, I'm dating stuff there, but DVDs and, the university and just learning everything, soaking up everything that you can, but knowing that, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what we're going to do the best. What other qualities, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what other qualities would you say that has helped you to get to where you are now?
Well, I was the black sheep of my family. And I think, I actually dropped out of high school after I won a state title in wrestling because my grade point average was below a 1.0. So I had tricked everybody into thinking I was not smart, including myself. So I won a state championship and they said, hey, you want to come to college? And I was like, so I can't get in. I said, yeah, you're good, but you're right. You can't get in. So I went out to Wyoming to a junior college and wrestled and I had a 4.0 and I was like, holy crap, I'm actually not dumb, so I would say that, the biggest driver for me at first, it was to prove people wrong and then turned into for my kids and turned into for my wife. And and now it's just, I prove things to myself, because my kids and my wife, they'll always be proud of me, but I keep kind of leveling up the goals. So our goal at CMH Capital is 100% collections, 100% tenant morale, and 100% occupancy. So if all three of those are not 100%, we are not done. So we just keep going. It's unreachable, right? No mad tenants.
Maybe.
No mad tenants
Yeah,
100%
right.
across the whole portfolio would be pretty tough.
I think that will keep you going if those are your goals. But I mean, honestly, how do you do it? There is a big stigma, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, about this asset class, right? The community or the tenants, the occupancy tend to be of the, lower class for the most part. I mean, there are differences. We had Daniel Weisfield talking about, in Modesto, these beautiful, like Class A mobile home communities they're building, right? But generally speaking, you have these trailer parks and you have these people that, notoriously, there are a lot of problematic tenants and things like that. So how do you deal with that? How practically do you bring up these parks?
Well, I used to be one of them. My parents were one of them. My grandparents were one of them. My aunt is one of them. So people in mobile home parks, they're usually the lower on the totem pole in society in general. So when people deal with when somebody's angry at a mobile home park, most of the time they're already swearing before you even get to hello. And that used to frustrate me. And then there's one call, I'll never forget it. This kid was like 20 years old. I was 25. And every time I'd come into the park, we'd be yelling at each other. And then I just said, hey, Michael, come here. And I just talked to him like a human being. And all of a sudden, he was my best tenant. So being even at the level we are today, my regional called me crying because she was all upset. And I said, give me his number and you stay on the line. And she thought I was going to be, aggressive towards him. I talked to him like a human being. We ended up talking for like an hour. And for the call, I showed him so much respect and, got on his playing field, and just try to speak like two equal individuals. By the end of the call, he had already wiped off all the bad reviews that he said about us. So more than anything, the big mistake a lot of people make is if I walk by my regional's office and she's yelling at a tenant, they know that is not tolerated. Because if they're yelling, we're the professionals. If we have to talk to them as if they are the same as us, because they are. The only difference is just the spot in which they're at in their life. And I have family members that live inside my mobile home park. So I'm not going to treat people like that. No one's going to treat my family like that. So that's the difference. I think that does help.
That would do it. I mean, that was really kind of leading to my next question, how you're keeping up the morale so high, but it sounds like it's just that kind of human experience, that touch that everyone kind of needs. And even if people are in a low spot and if they're yelling at you, it's probably not always your fault. They may have other things going on in their lives that are causing stress and causing these problems. And you may be the butt end of it, but if you can get into psychology, if you can try to help them out, I think that. Well, yeah,
it's like, do you want to be right or do you want to add a new tenant or a new home to your park? Like, I don't care about being right. It's us, I'm not always just out there trying to be right at everything. It's like we make mistakes. And when people call me and say, I sent you my rent and it's not applied, I say, hey, I highly doubt you have any reason to lie, but let's dig into it. And let's, I can't just waive it. We got to work through the steps. And a lot of times they respect that too, So, yeah.
Absolutely. Do you do any sort of like community projects in any of your parks, like bringing people together in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, so we do stuff on like the major holidays like Halloween. We don't do 4th of July for the obvious reasons, but what has been probably one of our biggest things is $10 gift cards to every resident on Christmas. And I have no idea why I did it in my first park. And like the response that I got was like so crazy uplifting, and I couldn't even afford it then. I mean, I was posting evictions in my first park while also having one on my rental here in Ohio because I was spending all my money on the park. I had no money and I just did it for some reason. And that, like, I think that brought up like collections like 8% the very next month. I don't know why. It's just they thought, hey, Corey's a nice guy, or whatever. But that seems to be pretty uplifting for a lot of people.
That's amazing. Such a small gesture, goes a long way. It's so true. When you're giving in response, people respond in kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You got any other, I know you do, because I've read online a lot of your amazing stories about different acquisitions and different things coming your way. But, before we jump to the final four, I'd love to hear if you have any other stories or anything that you'd like to share.
Any stories, like point me in a direction and we'll see if I got stuff. Yeah.
What I'd love to hear, I'll give you two options because I know I've read some posts of yours in the past that have taken these. So maybe I'll just jog your memory a little bit. Either a time where you found like, this crazy, amazing deal, like off market or something like that, or which I'm sure has happened a few times, or like a really, a bad tenant or something like that, that really just changed around through some action or other?
Well, I have two deals that one of them I don't recommend people doing, but I know after owning 40 mobile home parks, I know them. I know that a 37 space park in Ohio should not have a water bill of $120,000 a year. So what we did is we found this 37 space park and we bought it. No rent roll, no nothing. The bank that financed us, they didn't even ask me for a personal financial statement. They just said, hey, oh, cool, you own all these parks. And they came up to my office and they seen my office and they're like, yeah, sure. And I don't even know what they underwrote. And I was terrified, but at the same time, it was $265 and I brought in family and friends money for that one. I thought to myself, if it all goes south, I can just make sure my family and friends have their money back. So I made sure to let them know we have no freaking idea what we're getting ourselves into. But I know that the bill shouldn't be $120,000. Well, anyway, we were able to just raise to market, which was just a $65 a month raise, and lower the expense of the water from $120 down to now I think it's $36,000. So $36,000 all the way from $120, and we bought it for $265 9 months ago. It is under contract to sell right now. It's going to close here pretty soon for $1 million. So that kind of stuff over time, you just start to see things, before you even own a deal, that it's like, I didn't need a rent roll on that deal. The park was full. It was very clear that it was 37 out of 37, maybe a couple that I missed possibly, but it was like, it's a small deal. And the same thing happened to us in West Virginia in the same year. This guy wanted a 2 cap in West Virginia. And we're not talking a big city in West Virginia. It was like a decent sized city, but nothing special. So we went out there just to get it so we could possibly wholesale it. And we pull in, and it's the nicest park I've ever seen in the state of West Virginia. It's probably the nicest park ever. So the guy wants a 2 cap, still ridiculous. Again, the same story. His bill was $200,000. I'm like, dude, we're going to lower that. We need to get rents to market, and all the other parks are run down. And ours is all vinyl sided homes. So we bumped up, lowered that cost, and we took it from a 2 cap to a 14 cap overnight. It was like first 90 days. And, it's just like, I had to reel myself in after that because I started to think like I was getting a little cocky inside my brain, which is odd for me because I always feel I have this complex where I always kind of feel like everyone else is doing it better and smarter than me. And I just don't know. But I started to kind of feel a little swag off of those two. And I was like, I had to reel it back in.
Wow. Both of those are incredible stories. When you can take over, close to 400% return on a property, is just ridiculous. But those are probably some very happy family and friend investors.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, over the last 18 months has been the most interesting because we have bought and sold and refinanced out of 10 deals now. And we, that for a total purchase price of $6.8 million. And we have traded out for $19.3 million. And so like $8.3 million of profit, I think 9 deals altogether. So after our basis and all that good stuff. So we have an asset class and a niche inside of that we are comfortable with and we feel comfortable with. I own a couple 4 stars and 5 stars. I don't know. For some reason, I don't make a ton of money on them. I don't know what it is, but on a trailer park, I do very well, on the mobile home parks, taking a D to a C, never a D to an A, but a D to a C. Yeah.
That's amazing. Awesome. It's, inspiring. And it goes to show you really anyone can get started. Anyone can, come from one park. If you have the right mindset, you have the right attitude and vision like you do, it's really possible.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest thing for, someone that is just getting started, because one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone reaches out, they ask a question. Like, I don't even care if it's like, how do you calculate cap rate? Because I needed to ask that question and I read all the books. But it's like, to ask some of the basic stuff, it just shows that you haven't even came close to putting in the time that other people have. And my time to me is just too valuable. I could go spend it with my daughter. So it's like my advice to people, and I try to give advice to them all the time, say, hey, if you're asking that question, that means you need to start at square one, work your way, come back to me in 90 days and have a real conversation where you can actually grow, That's a big piece of advice if they want a mentor, of course.
For sure. Yeah, no, education is key. That's for sure. All right, Corey, we're going to transition now what we call the final 4. First question for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I would say in college, I had a lawn mowing job and it had nothing really to do. I've done roofing. I've done all different types of jobs, but this was my last job before I was graduating. And I had this grand illusion that 100 grand a year was going to be able to sit back on the couch and just accept that. But I had this lawn care job, and every day I woke up hating my life, and every day I did not want to be there. And I would just stare at, people driving down the street in a suit and tie and think, man, what they're doing. Well, anyway, that did lead me to walking in with grass covered jeans into the Edward Jones building. And the guy looked at me like, what the heck? I was like, I want to work here for free. And he's like, I don't think I'm technically allowed to do that. But he's like, sure, you can clean. So I cleaned for him. And then I started talking with him, learning from him. And that got me my internship that I never showed up for in Chicago. Yeah.
That's a funny story. All right. So second question, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah. Don't ask me the author, but you can Google it. It's What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the reason that one was the first one to come to mind is because if you own 10 parks and you think that you're going to get to 40 and you're going to operate them the same based on what you do when you have 10, it's not even close. I can operate 10 parks with a full-time job and spending 5 hours during the daytime with my kid. But when you bump past 10, there's something there that has to change, like in you, in your systems, in your processes, in little things like a park license. I mean, that becomes a very hard task because you have everything else around you. So yeah, I would say, so that book really focuses on getting executives from a VP to a president.
Wow. Okay. So we're going to put that in the show notes. Just Googled it, multitasking here by Marshall Goldsmith. So What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It looks like an awesome book. I'm definitely going to check it out myself, put it on the reading list for our listeners in the show notes. So thank you for that. Third question, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
It's what I'm learning now. So I've never been good with computers. I'm a salesperson. Even Edward Jones, you don't really mess with computers as much as people think. You're a salesperson. That's what a broker is, right? But I've really dove in deep and I've became a software intermediate, we'll call it, to where I can, make things automated and things like that. I mean, so it's been interesting to learn that. And that's what I want to keep developing because I seem to be able to sellers to like me and I know how to operate parks. And now I have my own money to invest. And if I can just get that part down, I know a little bit of everything. And it's very difficult to be, the president of a company if you don't even have any clue what's going on with the software, how to work it yourself or how to do things. So it makes it
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. Definitely sounds like it makes it a lot easier. So, and I appreciate that. That's a good one. I'm not too computer savvy myself either, but learning how to develop and learning how to do those kind of things seems like really valuable skills.
If you have a really good team, I was like, for me, at this time, I was just training everybody. So I couldn't go in and see if it was wrong because I had no idea. So I say, if you have a really good team, 1,000-foot view to be able to read KPIs and say, hey, this isn't right. It was getting to be out of hand, like I was mentioning.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So fourth and final question for you, Corey. What does success mean to you?
So a 5 year ago answer, I would have said 20 million. Today, it's, the comfort of knowing that my kid's not going to be fearful of, where the meals are going to come from or anything like that. But it's that alongside with time, because I have sacrificed a lot of time away from my wife and my daughter. It's definitely starting to play a role in my own brain. I mean, they're still right here next to me, but yeah, time, being able to buy my time back. I mean, you can never go backwards, but I had this false illusion that if I was retired by 40 and everyone else would be working until 65, the problem is you get to be 40 and my daughter would then be 16. She doesn't want to be around me at that time. She wants to go do her own thing. So you end up losing your whole life. So now it's been, we've probably spent like $700,000 a year of annual salary in just like the last 6 months on staff. So I'm buying my time back and I'm working very hard to get there. So yeah, time, that's it. Having the time to do what I need to do.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you making the time for us here today because this has been
no doubt. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for joining us. And where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yes, like LinkedIn and Facebook, Corey Allen Woodruff. And then my website is cmhcapitalinc.com. And then email is Corey at cmhcapitalinc.com.
There you go. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes, guys. Make sure to check out the show notes. There's always great value information there. And most people don't even know that it exists. So just click the little icon that says information on wherever you listen to podcasts, and you will find show notes that my team at Streamline Podcast, little pitch for them, do an amazing job of putting together. So thank you guys. And thank you, Corey. And thank you to our listeners once again for joining us. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.